Okay, let's talk some more about Stoicism. So whereas the first part of this series was about Epictetus, who was a slave, became a freedman, had been taking some philosophy as he was still a slave, and then became a philosophy teacher. The fun thing about Stoicism is that when it comes to the four Roman Stoics, of whom we have quite a bit of writing, Epictetus' student Arrian compiled the Discourses, no less than 8 books, of which we have 4. There was Musonius Rufus, a teacher of philosophy who also taught Epictetus. There was Seneca, who wrote a lot. And then there was the Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius, or at least one of the emperors of Rome, but an emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius, became interested in philosophy. And he wrote a very interesting book, the title of which is actually something like To Himself, but which is typically rendered in translated form as Meditations. He wrote in Greek, even though he was a Roman emperor, but Greek was the language of philosophy. And the book he wrote was never meant to be published. So in this series, this part of this series of talking about Stoicism, I do not want to go over the entire book like I did with the Enchiridion of Epictetus. The reason for that is that, quite honestly, some parts of the Meditations are incomprehensible. And that is because Marcus Aurelius was writing to himself. It was not something that he meant to have published, and it was not something like what Arrian did, a matter of actually just writing down pretty much verbatim the lectures of a teacher. This is someone, Aurelius, who was writing, organizing his thoughts. There's some evidence, some suggestion that this was a spiritual exercise for him, that he did this to kind of think about these types of concepts. And I think it's very interesting. So that was the very quick introduction on this book. There are many translations of the Meditations available. There's a very good study on the Meditations available called The Inner Citadel by B.R.E, who was so that's H-A-D-O-T, The Inner Citadel. It's a good book. He was a philosophy professor. And recently Donald Robertson wrote an interesting book called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, which is sort of applying the lessons of Marcus Aurelius, which is recommended as well. For this translation, for this series of videos, I'll be using this translation, the Penguin Classic series, simply because this is very widely available and it's not particularly expensive either. Now, as I said, we're not going to go over this bit by bit. First of all, that would be a very long series because there is way more chapters in this than there are in the Enchiridion. They're longer. So I will pick Capita Selecta, the first entire book of the 12 books in the Meditations. I am going to skip. And the reason for that is that that is pretty much a chapter where Marcus Aurelius thanks all kinds of people who have been helpful to him in his life, but I don't think that is something we need to discuss. You can read that. I start with the first passage. As you can see, this is shorter passages within books, so you can call those little chapters or whatever. I'm going to start with the first passage of the second book, which I've always found particularly appealing and really very stoic. Say to yourself, first thing in the morning, today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, aggressive, treacherous, malicious, unsocial. All this has afflicted them through their ignorance of true good and evil, but I have seen that the nature of good is what is right, and the nature of evil what is wrong, and I have reflected that the nature of the offender himself is akin to my own, not a kinship of blood or seed, but a sharing in the same mind, the same fragment of divinity. Therefore I cannot be harmed by any of them, as none will infect me with their wrong, nor can I be angry with my kinsman or hate him. We were born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. So to work in opposition to one another is against nature, and anger or rejection is opposition. Marcus Aurelius is often pictured as the sort of dark, brooding character in Stoicism, and you have to be fair here. His life was not an easy one. He had a wife that is suspected to have cheated on him. He had 13 children, only a small handful of whom survived. And he was the most powerful man in the universe at this time. He was the emperor of the Roman Empire, which pretty much owned almost all of the known world at that time, right? And so he was very, very powerful, and that means that all kinds of people came up to him because they wanted all sorts of things from him. And we also know that he was an incredibly virtuous person. Some Roman emperors were completely insane, had people tortured, killed, etc. And as far as we know, Marcus Aurelius did not do that. As a Roman emperor, I once saw, and right now his name eludes me, I'll try to put a description in the video. I once saw a lecture by a great professor of philosophy, a fantastic lecture on Marcus Aurelius, and he raises this point. Imagine that you are the most powerful being in the universe, like the known world, right? And for example, you can have sex with any person in the world. You can have anyone brought to you, and they have no way to say no to you. As far as we know, Marcus Aurelius did not do that. There were Roman emperors who did, but Marcus did not. So instead of thinking him as a dark, brooding character, I think he is a character that pretty much carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was the emperor. All kinds of people bothered him. They wanted this, she wanted that, they wanted such and such. They come begging for this, they come asking for assistance on that. And you have to make sense of all that. And you have to stick to yourself and stay true to yourself. That's not easy. And here you have this very beautiful way of him saying, well, look at everything you're going to meet and think of it as you wake up. Your first thought should be, today, I'm going to meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, aggressive, treacherous, malicious, unsocial. You will meet all these people. They will cross your path. There is nothing you can do about it because they are going to cross your path. And I think that in the centuries and centuries since Marcus Aurelius, not a lot has changed. Because you will meet those people. Even if you're not the Emperor of Rome, you will meet those people in your everyday life, in our modern world. You will meet people who are meddling. You will meet people who are gossiping. You will meet people who want something from you. You will meet people who are sycophants. You will meet people who are aggressive to you. You will meet people who treat you unfairly. You will treat people who are not nice. In other words, you're going to meet people who frustrate you every day. And you have to learn to live with those frustrations. And it would be quite stoic to do so, because if you were to lose your temper, or if you would let your negative thoughts influence you and make you angry or frustrated, then you are giving up your rational control. Your hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of your mind, is suffering because you give yourself over to negative emotions that are unpleasant and that will destroy and disrupt your even keel. And when you keep that even keel, then you lead a perfectly happy life, because you are not distracted and frustrated and angry about all these kinds of things happening to you. Now, for the record, it should be made absolutely clear that this is not easy to do. This is not easy to do at all. And I definitely used to be someone who got very frustrated and very upset and annoyed with people in the past. But since I've been really minding myself, I've found that it's become a lot easier to deal with these kinds of setbacks. Small things, someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe bigger things, not something I really experience here, but I have experienced in the past. People at work who are annoying, obnoxious, and just unpleasant to work with, but you have to work with them. I think Marcus Aurelius' point is beautiful. The human race is connected. We are all connected. And even if we are not brothers in blood, we may be brothers in bond. We may be connected to each other simply because we are all human beings and we're all trying to do things the best way we can. Which brings us back to something we've talked about before. Think of the Socratic definition of evil. People do not do evil willingly. They just do what they think is best for them at that point in time. And unfortunately, what they think is best for them at that point in time may not be what is best for you at that point in time, at that situation. But if you consider people to all be connected, it may be easier to forgive people. Now, of course, if someone does something that is absolutely truly terrible to you, well, then that becomes a little more difficult. But that's not what I'm talking about, and that's definitely not what Marcus Aurelius was talking about. He's just talking about annoying people, meddlesome people. We're not talking about someone who has killed every member of your family. You're talking about simple, everyday frustrations and annoyances. And those people you will run into, but you're connected to them. You know what true good is. And here's something that is truly good for your life of eudaimonia, this rich and fulfilling life that the Stoics want you to lead. An even keel. Frustration will destroy you. Anger will destroy you. But keeping an even keel emotionally will help you. It will help you in the long run. So how do you do it? Well, it's quite simple. You try not to get frustrated with others. You're connected to them. You know true good. You know that you should not get frustrated over small things. So someone cuts you off in traffic. Yeah, that's annoying. Did anyone get hurt? If not, why are you angry? Right? Simple things. Someone didn't meet their deadline at work. Well, that sucks, and someone will have to step in and solve it. But is it really the end of the world, or is it just a frustration? If it's just a frustration, then you have the option to not be frustrated. That's the decision you make. And if you realize that that person who did not meet their deadline was probably doing all they could and they just messed up. It happens. You've messed up. We all have. That's how life works. So I found it very helpful to tell myself this in the morning too. Today, and I don't go through his entire list, I have just abbreviated it. Today, I will meet unpleasant people. And that's a very simple. You don't have to memorize anything. Today, I will meet unpleasant people, but I'll cope. I will deal. It's not their fault that they're annoying. It is my fault that I find them annoying. I can choose to not find them annoying. I can choose to realize that what they're doing truly is not that annoying to me, and that it really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter if someone missed their deadline or cut me off in traffic. Even keel. Quite easy. You just have to do it. You have to keep doing it again and again and again. And that's it. So I've always found that opening in the second chapter in the Meditations to be a fantastic one. It's so applicable and it's so relatable because we all know what this is like. Now imagine that you are the most powerful man in the world, or woman in the world, doesn't matter, but in this case, in Marcus Aurelius' case, the most powerful man in the world. And everybody comes up to you and they demand all sorts of things from you, and you just want to have peace and read your philosophy books. You're all related. It's your duty to help others out. That's your duty as a Stoic too. Try to make other people's lives good as well, in a realistic way, to the degree that you can. And that's it. So I hope this was useful. First chapter of Marcus Aurelius, or actually second chapter, but first installment on Marcus Aurelius. Let me know if this is useful, helping you, interesting, relevant, etc. And more to come on Marcus Aurelius. I'd rather see you later.